DNS poisoning, also known as DNS cache poisoning or DNS spoofing, is a highly deceptive cyber attack in which hackers redirect web traffic toward fake web servers and phishing websites. These fake sites typically look like the user's intended destination, making it easy for hackers to trick visitors into sharing sensitive information. DNS poisoning makes it easy to access sensitive information on a device or in the interrupted web traffic flow. DNS cache poisoning is considered a type of man-in-the-middle attack. Attackers get the ability not only to send the victim to a fake website but also to connect to the legitimate server in the background and eavesdrop on sensitive information. The same technique can be used for very effective phishing attacks, often called pharming, and to spread malware. As you already learned before about DNS. But for reminder, a DNS lists the IP addresses associated with domain names, or the names of websites. A DNS server keeps track of the domain names and their associated IP addresses and sends users to the IP address associated with the website name they typed in. Methods for DNS spoofing or cache poisoning attacks. Among the various methods for DNS spoof attacks, these are some of the more common. Man-in-the-middle duping, where an attacker steps between your web browser and the DNS server. A tool is used for simultaneous cache poisoning on your local device and server poisoning on the DNS server. The result is a redirect to a malicious site hosted on the attacker's own local server. DNS server hijacks. The criminal directly reconfigures the server to direct all requesting users to the malicious website. Once a fraudulent DNS entry is injected onto the DNS server, any IP request for the spoofed domain will result in the fake site. DNS cache poisoning via spam. The code for DNS cache poisoning is often found in URLs sent via spam emails. These emails attempt to frighten users into clicking on the supplied URL, which in turn infects their computer. Banner ads and images, both in emails and on untrustworthy websites, can also direct users to this code. Once poisoned, your computer will take you to fake websites that are spoofed to look like the real thing. This is where the true threats are introduced to your devices. Risks of DNS poisoning and spoofing. Here are some common risks of DNS poisoning and spoofing. Data theft, malware infection, halted security updates, censorship. DNS spoofing poses several risks, each putting your devices and personal data in harm's way. Data theft can be particularly lucrative for DNS spoof attackers. Banking websites and popular online retailers are easily hit, meaning any password, credit card, or personal information may be compromised. The redirects would be to phishing websites designed to collect your information. Malware infection is yet another common threat with DNS spoofing. With a spoof redirecting you, the destination could end up being a site infested with malicious downloads. Drive-by downloads are an easy way to automate the infection of your system. Ultimately, if you're not using internet security, you're exposed to risks like spyware, keyloggers, or worms. Halted security updates can result from a DNS spoof. If spoofed sites include internet security providers, legitimate security updates will not be performed. As a result, your computer may be exposed to additional threats such as viruses or Trojans. Censorship is a risk that is actually commonplace in some parts of the world. For example, China uses modifications to the DNS to ensure all websites viewed within the country are approved. This nation-level block, dubbed the Great Firewall, is one example of how powerful DNS spoofing can be. Specifically, eliminating DNS cache poisoning is difficult, since cleaning an infected server does not rid a desktop or mobile device of the problem. The device will return to the spoofed site. Furthermore, clean desktops connecting to an infected server will be compromised again. How to prevent DNS cache poisoning and spoofing. When looking to prevent DNS spoofing, user-end protections are limited. Website owners and server providers are a bit more empowered to protect themselves and their users. To appropriately keep everyone safe, both parties must try to avoid spoofs. Here's how to prevent these attacks for website owners and DNS service providers. DNS spoofing detection tools. Domain name system security extensions. End-to-end encryption. Here's how to prevent these threats for endpoint users. Never click on a link you don't recognize. Regularly scan your computer for malware. Flush your DNS cache to solve poisoning. Use a virtual private network. Prevention tips for website owners and DNS server providers. As a website owner or DNS server provider, the responsibility to defend users is firmly in your hands. You can implement various protective tools and protocols to keep threats out. Among these resources, you would be wise to use some of the following. DNS spoofing detection tools. As an equivalent of endpoint user security products, these detection tools proactively scan all data received before sending it out. Domain name system security extensions. Essentially a DNS, verified real, label. The DNSSEC system helps keep a DNS lookup authentic and spoof-free. End-to-end encryption. Encrypted data, sent for DNS requests and replies, keeps criminals out as they won't be able to duplicate the unique security certificate for the legitimate website. Prevention tips for users. Users are particularly vulnerable to these kinds of threats. To avoid being a victim of a DNS poisoning attack, you should follow these simple tips. Never click on a link you don't recognize. This includes email, text messages, or links in social media. Tools that shorten URLs can further mask link destinations, so avoid those as much as possible. To be especially safe, always opt to manually enter a URL into your address bar. But only do so after you've confirmed that it is official and legitimate. Regularly scan your computer for malware. While you may not be able to detect DNS cache poisoning, your security software will help you uncover and remove any resulting infections. Since spoof sites can deliver all types of malicious programs, you should always be scanning for viruses, spyware, and other hidden issues. The inverse is also possible, as malware could deliver spoofs. Always do so using a local program rather than a hosted version, since poisoning could spoof web-based results. Flush your DNS cache to solve poisoning if necessary. Cache poisoning stays within your system for the long term unless you clean out the infected data. This process can be as simple as opening the Windows, Run program and typing IP protocol configuration or flushes as your command. Mac, iOS, and Android also have flush options. These are usually found in a Network Settings Reset option, toggling airplane mode via device reboot, or in a specific native web browser URL. Look up your specific device's method for guidance. Use a virtual private network. These services give you an encrypted tunnel for all your web traffic and the use of private DNS servers that exclusively use end-to-end encrypted requests. The result gives you servers that are far more resilient against DNS spoofing, and requests that can't be interrupted. Let's see how attacker performed this attack in example. In this attack, an attacker, IP is 192.168.3.300, intercepts the communication channel between a client, IP is this one, and a server computer belonging to the website abc.com, IP is 192.168.2.200. To carry out this attack, the attacker employs a tool, like ARP spoof, to deceive the client into believing that the server IP is 192.168.3.300. Simultaneously, the server is tricked into thinking that the client's IP is also 192.168.3.300. Below is a scenario of how the attack proceeds. The attacker uses ARP spoof to modify the MAC addresses in the server's ARP table, making it believe that the attacker's computer belongs to the client. The attacker again uses ARP spoof to inform the client that the attacker's computer is the server. By issuing the Linux command, the attacker ensures that IP packets sent between the client and server are forwarded to the attacker's computer. The attacker creates a host file, 192.168.3.300abc.com, on their local computer. This file maps the website www.abc.com to the attacker's local IP. A fake web server is created on the attacker's local IP, which resembles www.abc.com. A tool like DNS spoof redirects all DNS requests to the attacker's local host file. As a result, users are presented with a fake website, and interacting with it leads to the installation of malware on their computers. DNS poisoning versus DNS spoofing. While the terms DNS poisoning and DNS spoofing are used interchangeably, there's a difference between the two. DNS poisoning is the method attackers use to compromise and replace DNS data with a malicious redirect. DNS spoofing is the end result, where users are redirected to the malicious website via a poisoned cache. In short, DNS poisoning is the root and DNS spoofing is the goal. Hackers poison a DNS cache to spoof a DNS.